Hola amigos de la prensa, estamos muy emocionados el día de hoy por otorgarle este merecidísimo tributo a Oliver Stone. Gracias en primer lugar a The Resort at Pedregal, que nos abre sus puertas, el hotel oficial de estas galas. Y me emociona mucho. I'm really thrilled to have you here, Oliver. It's a great privilege, especially premiering a film that is so relevant right now as Snowden. First of all, it's been like 15 years since you come to Los Cabos, maybe?
15, yes.
What do you like about this town? Tell us.
Well, back then it was much smaller, but it was about as hot. But I have only been here in the hotel for. I want to get out more. I want to swim and get around tonight. Maybe see some things after dinner.
That would be great. I think Los Cabos has grown, but it still has that like very original flavor. You know, like
well, you know,
small town.
The whole Mexican film industry has changed enormously since 2000. It was, you know, I don't know any of these people. There was Perros Amos, Lost Dogs, and I worked with Rodrigo and Rodrigo Prieto in about 2000. At the beginning there, I worked with him on Alexander in 2003, and then Comandante, Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, and a few other, and South of the Border. What am I saying? South of the Border. Yes, Sud de la Frontera. So Rodrigo's played a big part of my life, and Inarritu is very talented, as is Lubinsky, and Cuarón, and who's the other one? There's so Toro, Guillermo del Toro. Such a, it wasn't all there. This is all expounded, and I know the festival is very involved with promoting young filmmakers. What's next? I guess this next wave is even going to be more dangerous. But right now they're at the top of the game.
I'm glad you say that. Actually, for us it's very inspiring to have a filmmaker like you with such a prolific career. And now with Snowden, you know, a film that is it's still questioning power, making the right questions, and a responsibility that I think we all have as democratic societies. You're just portraying a crime, in this case committed by a government, right? And what important moment to think about government, especially now what happened 2 days ago. What is your...
It's a big question. You're asking the whole thing. But first about Snowden, you know, what he did was very courageous. He was saying that the United States broke the law, the constitutional law of the United States, by illegally surveilling not only all its citizens, but frankly the whole world. The whole world, not only people, but governments, spying on allies as well as supposed enemies, stealing corporate espionage data, banking data, what they call data mining. For those of you who know, data mining is serious, and also it brings on drone warfare and it brings on cyber warfare. You use information in any way possible. The United States now has achieved total dominance of both cyberspace, sea, land, air, space itself, and underwater. The cable, tapping into all the cabling systems, getting all the information it can. There is no reason for this, and there's no law that allows it. Now, Snowden was saying, look, if you're talking about terrorism, make it targeted surveillance, and we use that term in the film, targeted surveillance. It makes sense. That's the way you catch terrorists, by human signals and also by SIGINT, by signals itself. And they're quite capable of catching anybody. The terrorists, on the basis that the terrorists might be talking on an open line, open source like that, is crazy to think that you need to listen in on everybody. There's no reason for it. The only reason it exists, as Snowden says in the film, is for global and social control of societies. Now look to Mexico, for example. You're one of the most listened in on countries in the world. You've had CIA here, heavily involved on all the transmissions since the 1960s, 50s, even in the 1940s. Mexico cannot move in any direction without being watched by the United States. Your elections, we've hacked into all your elections, and it's been known. So this situation is worldwide. In the movie, Snowden is talking about Japan, and he says, we asked them to tap their citizens, this is in 2008, and they refused. because it was against their laws. They had ethics. But we went ahead and tapped them anyway. And not only did we tap them, but in the case that they were no longer our allies one day, we implanted malware viruses into all their civilian infrastructure of importance, their power stations, their grids, their railroad stations, their dams, and so forth. So if Japan it starts to go the other way and joins China, let's say, against us, there is a price to pay. To be an ally of the United States is a very dangerous thing for Mexico, for Brazil, for every country in Europe. And this is what's going on. This is a game for power, worldwide, Game of Thrones, if you want. This is the Game of Thrones. And the United States is very good at it, very soft, very manipulative, soft power, doing it quietly. No big deal, no wars as much as possible. But sometimes things happen. If you tap Brazil to the degree that they've tapped Brazil, you're going to know everything about Petrobras, the oil company. You're going to know everything about the banking, about the scandals, the corruption. And what comes out 2, 3, 4 years later? It comes out in the Dilma Rousseff scandal. And Dilma Rousseff is suddenly removed because she's a leftist government in Latin America. These things always have consequences. Ukraine, Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Libya. It doesn't end. It doesn't end, and it makes the world much more dangerous unless we have treaties with each other and respect each other's regimes. Mexico be Mexico, Russia be Russia, Korea be Korea, Iran be, and so forth. Live and let live. This is what's at stake. So the world is going to become much more dangerous, much more as hostage to the United States, because the United States really wants complete social control of the world. It wants everybody to adopt one algorithm, which is Google or whatever. It's a U.S. algorithm. They don't want to allow other countries to have their own systems, their cultures. This is a fundamental error. That's what the movie is really about. I'm sorry to make it long, but this is what it's really about. It's about Mexico having its own film culture, but on a bigger scale, it's really about where the power lies.
No, the borders are blurring, I think, if you talk about cyber war and all that. And my question was also intended to what changes now that such amount of power now with a recent election that is changing many things, obviously.
Well, that's a more specific thing that happened a few days ago. I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen. I think that's kind of interesting time because everybody is so terrified of Trump. They've said that all over Europe, I know that, and everywhere in the world I've heard this story. Everyone, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? It'll probably not be quite dramatic as that. I think it'll probably be consolidate and it'll be more conservative at first than we think. There's a lot of restraint being practiced on him. You also have the media, the same media that took such a beating is already at it, trying to tell him what to do. So it's really hard for, I would hate to be a rebel, but he is a rebel, and I don't think, I think certainly in some areas we can look optimistically that he's a smart man and he doesn't want war, and I was worried very much that the administration under Hillary Clinton was leaning towards a neoconservative approach to Russia and to China and to Iran. So looking for proxy spots to put pressure on, especially in Syria. And that would have led to a very difficult situation because I don't think the Russians are going to back down on their ally, Syria, or much less on their own country. Because I think Hillary Clinton's ultimate game was regime change in Russia. That is the big game for her. And then regime change in China because China scares them and it's a much bigger power than Russia in terms of economics. So that's at stake. And with Trump, I hope that he has the good sense, because he's a businessman. He says he wants to make deals, the art of the deal, that he'll try to make a deal with Russia as well as China. And I think that'd be better for everybody than this present situation of uncertainty and cyber warfare. But at the same time, he was a man who called for the execution of Edward Snowden and more surveillance. So I'm confused, as many are people, and we don't know what's going to happen. But let's hope that he's a good businessman at this time.
Let's hope. I think there's many questions from our friends of the press, so I'll give the microphones to you guys. Yeah, you can.
Hi, Enrique Navarro from Reforma newspaper. Down here.
Let's give us a minute.
Can you translate this?
Can anyone help?
This is not comfortable, so.
I'll translate for you.
Yeah, you translate.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sir?
Yeah.
Over here. Yeah. ¿En español?
Lo que tú en inglés.
Okay, after all these things that you said, and I'm thinking about this scene on your movie when Barack Obama said, "We are not getting down a plane just to catch Edward Snowden," and they did. They stuck by a moment Evo Morales. So after all these things that you are saying, is America that powerful? Aren't you afraid about your job? I mean, with this new administration, do you think they will let you make films that with this social compromise?
Well, I mean, the fact, it's already pretty terrifying if you think about it, that every European country, none of them were able to offer Snowden's asylum. Was Mexico able to? Would Mexico have, do you remember not so long ago, Mexico offered asylum to Trotsky, Leon Trotsky. He was in Mexico. There were many communists here living in Mexico. So what, would Mexico give asylum to Snowden now? Come on, be honest. You couldn't, even if you wanted to. Even if the people said he's a hero. They would not be able to because of the government of the U.S. Every country in Europe passed on him. The only place he's safe is really in Russia. Yes, Venezuela gave him, but they couldn't protect him. Neither could Bolivia or Ecuador. So it's a dangerous world because it's one country is telling us everybody what to do, except they can't tell Russia, China, Iran, or North Korea, etc., what to do. That's the only exception to the rule. So let's hope for a multipolar world. Let's hope for different cultures. Let's hope for a balance of power. Allow other countries to be who they are. That's my big point that I'm trying to make in my statement. As to the future, and it's already, look at what's happening. When I was a young man in 1960s in Europe, do you remember that Charles de Gaulle was able to leave NATO because he didn't agree with the warlike policies of NATO? Now, France is in NATO. Every country's in NATO. They don't even consider leaving it. Now they're in NATO, and of course they have to be in the new European Union. And this is a very difficult time for all of them because they're not comfortable with fighting a war with Russia. They're not comfortable with putting troops on the border of Russia like this. More troops on the border of Russia now since Hitler had in World War II. This is quite threatening to the Russians. This is their country, and they feel like they're being circled off and stigmatized with a boycott, with a business boycott that's very severe. This is very dangerous. So what's worse? What's worse now? We're at the edge of war, a real World War III. And Ms. Clinton was charging. She was charging more pressure. What's worse? I don't know. They can only get better, I hope, because I don't think Trump's stupid and wants World War III. And I don't think the United States military wants World War III, because, frankly, we would lose much more than Russia because our economy is 10 times stronger. We would lose our country. It was crazy to fight a war. We forget sometimes the danger of nuclear war. If I'm told by nuclear scientists who are real that even if India and Pakistan go to war and drop one or two of their new weaponry, the world will be, the air in the world will be screwed up for 10 years. So much dust and ozone damage would be done. Can you imagine the bombs that we now have between Russia and the United States? Imagine what those bombs can do. They'll ruin the planet. It's over. So the important thing, the only important thing is war. Avoid war. We have to talk peace. We have to have treaties. We got to get off this war path that we're on. That's what scares me and should scare you. So most important.
Another question? Adelante.
Mr. Stone, welcome to Los Cabos.
I'm here.
Hello. I would like to ask you about how we're coming from Cabo Mill 96.3 FM. The program is Generation X. And we'd like to ask you, why did you decide to get great artists as Peter Gabriel for the music of the last movie?
Well, we started the movie, and Peter Gabriel, who I'd worked with before on Natural Born Killers, he participated. volunteered to come in. He very much cared about the Snowden story. He saw the movie and he wanted to write this piece, which he wrote, and I think it's beautiful, Veil, V-E-I-L, and we put it to the imagery. It didn't belong in the movie because it was a certain type of piece, but we felt that it was a strong montage to end the movie. Did you like it?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I liked it too. Now, Peter is a man of great heart and great humanitarian.
Yes.
Another question?
Hi, good evening, sir.
Yes, they're interested in everything.
My question is about the free speech. Do you still believing that somewhere in the world today the free speech is prevailing, or those exist?
Let's be honest, I can only tell you my own experience. We made Snowden, we went to all the major corporations that make movies in the United States. All of them turned us down, all of them. No reasons, they didn't give you reasons, but they turned it down. Too controversial, whatever. This is because it's a new business. Everything goes upstairs. In other words, you give it to the movie company, they say, we like it, we want to do it. Oh, but let me go check with the company that owns me. And they go to the board, and those companies are gigantic. They're telecoms or Sony Pictures, this, that, or Comsat, and those companies all have gigantic businesses all over they depend on government. They collaborate with government to get their mergers through, their deals through. There's many complications in big business. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago, AT&T announced that it was going to take over, buy out Warner Brothers. Now, Warner Brothers was a very interesting company. I worked with them 4 or 5 movies, and they always gave me a certain amount of freedom. Always an amount of freedom, and they encouraged me. And they were for me, a good company. And they didn't care what the government was thinking in those days. Now, if they're owned by AT&T, I just want to point out that one of the biggest collaborators of the United States government is AT&T. They collaborated with the government way before Snowden. Back in the 1940s, 50s, they tap phones, they do whatever they're asked to do. They were part of that group that was in the documents. Verizon and AT&T were the 2 phone companies that were collaborators with the government for many years after 2001. So were Apple, Facebook, and they were listed in the movie. But everyone lets AT&T off the hook. So now they're going to take over Warner Brothers. Hopefully not. Many people are going to protest. But this is the end of free speech. It doesn't come like, you can't say that. It just comes by silence. They don't make your movie. They don't make the means by which they give you any attention. You can't broadcast. So it comes very subtly. It's like soft power. The movie doesn't get made. My movie was rejected in the United States. The only way I got it made was because the French and the Germans who respected Snowden, supported it. And that's the difference that's a thin thread between saying, so when you have a world that's corporate owned, global corporate owned, you're going to get nothing. You're going to get, you get most of what you see mostly on TV and many movies, and not much of the advertising. You just get one voice. It's the global capitalist voice. So that's very real. Should be very real to every one of you who you work for some of these companies. I know. Alternate media is great.
Por allá, por favor.
Here is Oliver. Hi, I'm Tatiana from HBO Latin America. I wanted to talk to you about...
Time Warner, right? You're going to be part of AT&T.
Forget about that. I wanted to ask you about you being honored here at the festival. How does it feel, and the importance of having a film festival in Mexico that welcomes the neighbors?
Well, this is very... tonight I'll see for myself, but it sounds real. It sounds like great young directors and filmmakers are here. Alonso has explained his mission very clearly. Mission civilisatrice, let's say, a civilizing mission. He really wants to make the Mexican industry even more vibrant. And you have great filmmakers. They're all going north to work. But now you should try to get it going here with smaller films too. I was a big fan. I was telling him of Maria Felix many years ago. I watched her movie. She was a sexy movie star. And when I first came to Mexico to make Salvador in 1985, the Cuernavaca film commissioner was a very charming woman named Katy Jurado. And she was so gracious to us. We were young filmmakers, no money. And she made sure we were taken care of. and shown the locations, and very sweet woman. A wonderful, gracious movie star, and I hope there's more like that coming, because Mexico is very talented. You saw these filmmakers I mentioned. These are top of the world right now. Look at this, Inarritu, 2 Oscars, for Christ's sake. That's as many as I got as a director.
Who's next? Aquí. Allá atrás estamos.
Hello, Mr. Stone. I'm Cecilia Ballesteros from the Spanish newspaper El País. So don't you think that Trump is a big threat to your country and for the rest of the world?
I just answered the question. I don't want to go into it again. I tried to make the point that look at where we are now. I mean, talk about threat. You don't understand the threat that we are posing as a country. You're not really paying attention to what I said about where Clinton was at. So what can be worse right now? We'll see. Maybe Clinton will be worse, but stop getting hysterical about something that's 3-4 months away. You understand what I'm saying? I don't think you heard a word of what I said. I feel like I'm talking in the wind.
No, you're not. Believe me, we heard you. Next question.
El País, very conservative.
Hi, Mr. Stone.
They hated all the people I made pictures about. They hated Chavez, and they hated Castro.
Hi, Mr. Stone. In front of you, you used to get many formats in your movies. You experiment with many kinds of cameras or video, like Natural Born Killers in GFK. Can we expect in a near future you can go in that way again? Or is a way that you say it's done?
You know, each film I did, nobody kind of understands it, but I try to make each film fit the subject. Mr. Snowden is a much quieter story. It's a dangerous story, but he's a spy. And he's working very quietly, you're working at a computer screen all day. This is coding. This is the most boring stuff in the world. It's quiet. So this film has not merited to me the fireworks of JFK. So I set my style. I'm a storyteller. I really don't make the same film. I'm trying each time to start from zero. I don't remember what I did on JFK. I really don't. I mean, I can see it again, but it's past history. It's out of my bloodstream right now. Right now I'm working style to style to style. So it depends on the next story. If it's an austere story, maybe it'll be austere like a Bresson film. In fact, I kind of think it might be. So I'm not interested in all the fireworks. Let the young kids try that. Anyway, everything I did on JFK and Natural Born Killers and so forth was copied right away by commercials. So every commercial's got those elements in it. So I can't, you can't just invent new stuff all the time for the purposes of feeding commercials.
No, but now that you're talking about the creative side of Snowden, I would also like you to share a little bit, because you're a producer too in these films, right? So
no, I wasn't a producer, but
I mean,
I don't want to worry more than I worry. I would have no hair left.
But there's a big story behind everything you had to do to get access to Snowden, dealing with a Russian lawyer, with an LA lawyer, then the book that you had, the rights of that book. I mean, that's an interesting story by itself. Please share it with the media, please.
Yeah, at first I didn't want to touch it because it was a headline story, 2013 June. I agreed with it. I saw what was the writing was on the wall. I think many of us suspected that the Bush administration was doing it for a long time, because there'd been a story by James Risson in 2005 that finally broke after being spiked by the New York Times for like 13, 14 months. It was a story of mass eavesdropping in the States, and it was killed by the Times before the election of 2004, because if that story had come out, I don't believe Bush would have been elected. It's that corrupt. It's that corrupt. It pisses me off. So anyway, we knew that something was going on. Snowden gave us the evidence. He gave us proof in 2013 that this was worse than anybody suspected, bigger than anyone suspected. And no one still understands those documents. Those documents are very interesting, but it's so boring. It's technical work to understand. That's why most journalists don't even really know. They just give you a headline. So it's taken 3-4 more years of listening in and understanding that this is what cyber warfare is, what cyber journalism is, what drone warfare is, what all this computer work is. And as I said earlier, we have, I don't know if I said it, but we have satellites, the most expensive satellites in the air, 22,000 miles up in space, with antenna on them the size of the Eiffel Tower, listening on everybody and everything. So it's serious business that Snowden was revealing, but it never got through. It was about my iPhone, my laptop. That's small stuff compared to the big picture. The big picture was lost. I say that because when I got to him, I was not to want to touch it. I didn't want to touch it because, first of all, I'm not a computer expert. I don't like those kind of computer films. They're fun, but they're fantasy. This was real. But when I went over there, I met him with his lawyer. His Russian lawyer invited us. He was a human rights lawyer, Anatoly Kucherena. He wrote a book, a fiction book about Snowden. It was like in 1984. He was it was a very interesting story, but we did not know if at that time if we were going to make a fiction movie or if we were going to make a fact-based Snowden story, because we didn't know if he'd cooperate. And over those 9 visits, he gave us more and more talk, more intimacy. He gave us the approval to go ahead. Basically the approval to go ahead. That made the difference. Now we had amazing information, amazing accurate information about the NSA. So that was hard to turn down because you don't want to chase a news story in case it blows up in your face. So we did it over 2.5 years, no money, as I told you. It was very difficult to make and then complicated to explain in script terms, to break it down, technical information. We went back to Snowden, we showed him the script twice. He made very good suggestions, especially on technical matters, but also emotional matters. And then we went to we showed him the movie twice before we released it. So we wanted to try to make every correction because we knew if we'd be exposed, if we made 1 or 2 mistakes, of course the NSA would be there and completely blow the story out of the water. The NSA still said it was full of shit, but they can't, their evidence is not very good, you see. And they never denied, they never really accepted his existence as he got access because he was smart. I'm not saying he was the top of the agency, but he was an important player. They moved him around the board. They allowed him to do certain things that normally they wouldn't give access like that. But still, he didn't have access to everything, but he had access to cyber operations, a lot of them. That's the last job he had in Hawaii. He was a cyber warrior. He was an offensive specialist in cyber warfare against the Chinese. And he was also very good at defensive cyber. He says often, we have to concentrate our forces on defensive cyber because that's where the attacks will come. And that's where we're going to be very vulnerable because we're spending so much time on cyber operations offensively. We're losing sight of being defensive because if you look around right now, the world there's a hack every other day. Remember, this stuff started in 2009, roughly, when, guess who attacked Iran? Does anybody have the answer? Do you remember the Stuxnet virus? Anybody here? Because this is important historically. This was the first declaration of war with cyber virus. And what did they do? They put it in Iran along with Israel. Israel scientists, U.S. took a big team, huge team. They put this in Iran, and they said it would be limited to Iran. They were wrong. It got out into several other countries, and other people picked up on it, and everybody knew now the United States was in cyber war because they studied the virus. They studied it, and they found it. It took several months. It takes work to find out who launched something, and that is a big point you should take into account in the world we have now. All these accusations from Hillary Clinton camp saying that the Russians did it. This is bullshit. She's throwing out information without proof. In intelligence operations, you have to do the homework, and it takes time. And the world cycle, the news cycle, do they wait to make accusations? It's more interesting to make an accusation, you know? Iran did it, China did it, Russia did it. This is easy. You have to do the work. And that's what I know from my talking to cyber scientists. So here we are in a position where no one will know where the next war started because there'll be accusations, there'll be counter-accusations, and before you know it, a cyber war will be turned into a hot war. We're at a very dangerous time. So when that journalist asked me, aren't you worried about Trump? How the fuck can you be worried about Trump when we have this problem right now? This thing could blow any day. It could be there was a hydroelectric dam in Russia, about the 6th biggest in the world, that blew up in 2007, 8, something like that. Blew up. Many people killed, blah, blah, blah. There was 1 million tons of water about to spread and drown other people. Do you think Russia said the United States did it? A few days ago, six major Russian banks were hacked with huge waves of attacks given by how many botnets in how many countries, 20 countries, but of course, who could do that? Who has the power to send that many forces against the six banks in the Soviet Union, in Russia? I think we know. But did they come out and say the U.S. is attacking Russia? Did they? They could have. That was what Clinton would have done. This is what makes the world so dangerous now. I can't impress this enough upon you, that the threat is here, it's now, it's not tomorrow. And if Trump is anything of a smart businessman, which I hope he is, he'll see this and he will try to curb it. Because if we can do it to them, they can do it to us, because they're just as good, just as smart. We dropped the atomic bomb, I swear, in 1945. Truman told Oppenheimer, we'll keep this a secret, no one will ever find out. Bullshit, Oppenheimer said. You can't hide a secret. People are smart. Russian scientists, spies, and so forth, they got the secret. They built the bomb by 1949. So everybody gets, and now how many people have the bomb? You can't keep these kind of secrets. You need a United Nations, you need treaties, you need trust between people. I feel like I'm repeating myself.
You're not. Trust me. We have time for a last question. There.
Hi, Oliver. Here. And what about, how do you imagine America in 4 years? How do you imagine?
Listen, I didn't think Trump would get elected. I said I'd eat my shirt, so I'm really fucked now because I have to look for a shirt to eat. Honey, remind me to eat my shirt because I promised this journalist I would eat my shirt. So I'm not going to predict, I hope we're here.
Do you think he's going to
I hope we are still able to have a little freedom and function and make good movies. And I hope we're talking to each other.
And you think he is going to finish the 4 years of the presidency?
You're making up your own story. But go ahead, that's fine. It's fiction. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen.
We don't know. Thank you very much, Oliver. Truly.
Thank you.
It's such an honor for Los Cabos Film Festival to give you this tribute, to premiere Snowden, and to listen to you, because this is what cinema should do in any other subject, and this one most importantly, enhance dialogue, ask questions, make us think a little bit more about what the world we live in.
Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you, Oliver.
And I will not eat my shirt tonight, but I will.